Well, we're back for yet another edition of Triggering Professional Sports Fan Bases, and today, nobody who loves a team in the NBA is safe. From your team's worst draft picks to their most heartbreaking playoff moments, we're going to attempt to elicit a few laughs and a little bit of anger. You'll love it when I roast everyone else, but hate it when I throw your team under the bus. Break out the barbecue sauce. It's time to get to roast. Okay, as you might have seen in the previous triggering video for the NFL, there are a few ground rules we need to lay down. Each NBA squad will be given 3 to 4 uncalled for jabs to the gut, and then we move on. If you see something I forgot, of course, leave a comment below and I will slap my forehead in disbelief as how I could forget that. Full disclosure, I am a Knicks fan and I really don't have any direct hate for other teams because the focus of my hate pretty much lies with the Knicks, and they will absolutely get it the worst out of all the teams here. So stick around for that. We're going to start off with an easy target, the Miami Heat. Once the lightning rod of roasting ire, much hate for this team has died down since the Messiah took his talents back to Cleveland. You blew a big series to the Knicks in 1999 because of this ridiculous fight. You were bad for a long time when Ronnie Cycli and baby Jordan Harold Miner were your best players. And with LeBron defecting and D-Wade moving on, it's pretty clear you sold your soul to the devil for 7 championships and got only 2.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
Oh, hello, 76ers. Christ, I can't even remember a time when you were actually good. You had both the answer and Charles Barkley, but only made one finals in which not getting swept was the only bright spot there. The 1972-73 Sixers are the worst team in NBA history with a whopping 9-73 records. I mean, goddamn, 9 wins? That's pathetic. And it appears that trusting the process has been a franchise-long thing that includes drafting perpetually injured players and sucking more than a newborn calf on a milk teat. Speaking of sucking copious amounts, come sit here next to me, Washington Wizards fans. You should rightfully be embarrassed that an ex-porn star who is dumber than all the shit Tech Racks does to iPhones reps your gear and claims to be a fan. Let's see, you drafted Kwame Brown with the #1 overall pick. You let a past his prime MJ play for you and taint his legacy for 2 seasons. And of course, your best player at the time thought it was a great idea to bring a loaded gun into the locker room to mess with his teammate. Man, I miss Gilbert Arenas. Hibachi! The Minnesota T-Wolves. The team players leave like a psycho ex-girlfriend. I wonder why nobody wants to play in Minnesota. Here's a short list off the top of my head of players who left Target Land and won championships. KG, KL, Chauncey Billups, and let's of course bring up the 2009 NBA draft where you took Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn with back-to-back first-round picks but passed on Steph Curry. Ooh, that has to hurt. The Atlanta Hawks. Many people might not know this, but the Hawks, who were in St. Louis at the time, drafted Bill Russell in 1956 and traded him away. That's kind of funny considering in 1956 how many 6'11" tall super athletic black basketball players were there. Fitting that the word traded is an anagram for tarded, which in this case, the Hawks shipped a legend who would win 11 championships for a bunch of no-name. Now, Dominique was awesome for a long time, but the Hawks continually have not gotten close to a championship. In fact, your only championship was in 1958 in St. Louis, and you've been about as successful in the city of Atlanta as the traffic engineers have been. The Boston Celtics, the Knicks' chief rival. You saw your pathway to the #1 seed get shattered like Gordon Hayward's ankle. You were successful in the 80s, but you had the ugliest group of humans assembled since the hills have eyes. You drafted a generational talent who died of an overdose. That's actually pretty sad. And of course, you have been relegated to being LeBron's Eastern Conference bitch the last 7 or so years. Houston Rockets. How about that time Vernon Maxwell went all Mike Milbury and punched a fan? That time Jeremy Lin got his pocket picked coming up the court in a playoff game? And you thought local Dwight Howard was a good idea. The Sacramento Kings. Boy, does 2002 trigger you much. 27 free throws for the Lakers in the 4th quarter. Don't tell me it wasn't rigged. It was rigged like the Special Olympics. And you've pretty much been terrible since the one chance you had to win it all evaporated like the saliva in Dick Bavetta's whistle. The Phoenix Suns. Barkley got you to the finals, however, the Bulls steamrolled you like M1 tanks headed for Baghdad. You wasted Steve Nash MVP years by not teaching him how to play defense. And even worse, versus the Spurs in 2007, Robert Horry decked Nash, and yet Amari Stoudemire and Boris Mantit's Jaw got suspended for leaving the bench, and you lost. And speaking of M1 tanks, it seems like you've been doing that since Nash left you. The Pistons. What made you think that drafting Darko Milicic was a great idea? Oh look, he's big, he's tall, and European. Let's pass on D. Wade and Chris Bosh for him. Of course, you can never forget those looks of utter shock on the bad boys' faces when MJ finally figured out how to get past them. And that glorious night when your fans represented the D by setting off Meta with one very accurate slinging of a drink. More on that later. Okay, Warriors fans, you might be sitting pretty right now, but do any of you bandwagon fucks even know who this player is? If you know it's Jason Richardson, then good for you. Then you remember that time when Lateral Sprewell tried to choke his coach like Wayne Brady in an alley.
Is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke a bitch?
Yes, it's pronounced Latrell, but I know. And let's not forget, you traded Chris Webber for garbage. But oh well, you got lucky as hell that Curry fell into your lap. And your bandwagon has more barnacles on it than the LeBron-led Heat. Staying out west, the Denver Nuggets. Thank you for drafting and stashing the league's biggest ball hog, a guy more cancerous than anal polyps. You lost 23 straight games in 1997 and 1998. You have 0 NBA championships. You've been in the NBA since 1976, and you've never even won a conference championship. You exit the first round faster than Indian curry through a white person's butthole. The Bulls. Okay, you get a pass for the 6 championships in 8 years. However, MJ's gambling suspension easily cost you 2 championships. You've been lackluster since the domination years, but luckily you've been smart enough not to hire MJ or Phil Jackson as your GM, but either one of them would have run Jimmy Butler out of town just the same. And of course, you gave us Derrick Rose, the NBA's version of Windows 98. Isn't he on the Cavs and isn't he hurt again already? Ayo, Brooklyn! You used to play in North Jersey, which is painful enough, and you had a rapper move your team to Brooklyn, where the team is given about as much attention as gamers give the Wii U. You blew a 26-point lead to the Celtics, and when you were in Jersey, you did make back-to-back finals where you got swept out the building by the Lakers, and the Spurs used you like a dish rag in 6 games, and you haven't been any good since, since you gave all that money to Joe Johnson. And Jason Kidd did this bullshit to get a timeout. Bush League. The Mavericks. First of all, you got a fabulous horse sporting some major flow as your mascot. You let Steve Nash walk for Phoenix by not matching his offer sheet, offering $20 million less, when he in turn blossomed into an MVP. And of course, you still claim to this day that you got hosed by the refs in the finals versus the Heat, which you probably did, but really, who gives a shit besides you? The Indiana Pacers. Well, you had Mr. Shoot Off the Curl for a long time and still never won a championship, even with Mr. Dead inside, hometown hero Larry Bird as your coach, who hated coaching so much he just quit. Of course, you had those devastating moments versus the Knicks, but remember in 1999, you absolutely blew a chance to go to the finals and win it all, but you let Marcus Camby run the Davis brothers down the court like Biggest Loser contestants. And of course, Ron Artest flying into the crowd to start a riot, perhaps the most embarrassing moment for a franchise you could possibly experience. The OKC Thunder. Well, you moved from Seattle in 2006, and that really pissed those people in the Northwest off so much that they haven't bothered to replace you. Before you got to OKC and squandered opportunities, you lost to an 8 seed in the playoffs, the first time that's ever happened. And your time in Bricktown has been marked by talent leaving, missing opportunities, blowing series leads, and having Klay Thompson hitting all of the threes on you. All the threes. So before the 2012 rigged NBA draft lottery, the New Orleans Pelicans used to be the Hornets, and in 1997, the Hornets drafted a then high school kid and traded him to the Lakers for Vladdy Dottie, we likes to party. That teenager was Kobe Bryant. From there, you spiraled into a display of misery. You let Alonzo Mourning go to the Heat, and then the NBA had to end up buying your ass and selling you to a Louisiana billionaire under the condition that he would get the top draft pick. And watch you guys waste the Unibrows' career in the Big Sleazy. Hey Bucks, how are you? Not much to trigger here except way back 40 years ago, you also let one of the all-time greats go to Los Angeles, then Lou Alcindor. He did win you a championship, your only one in 1971, but then he was the one that didn't want to freeze to death in Wisconsin. I guess that cheese wasn't as appealing as the sun and fun of LA. You haven't won a division title since 2001, and it kind of just seems you exist in this league versus actually being successful in it. Speaking of teams that just exist in the league, what about those Los Angeles Clippers, the NBA's version of a freeloading college kid that just hangs around and leeches money off its parents and doesn't even have the decency to clean up after themselves? Probably the most amazing thing about the Clippers is that for nearly 40 years they tanked over and over again. In fact, in 2009 they were named the worst organization in all of sports by ESPN. Until of course Donald Sterling went full senile and spouted out racist remarks, and the league had to punish him by making him sell the team for $1 billion. Boy, they really showed him. And then the Clips actually tried winning, but like everything about this team, they absolutely blew the conference semis and a shot at respect when the Ginger brothers CP3 and DeAndre Jordan collapsed against the Rockets in 2015. Let's stay in LA with the team that owns the Clippers like the Penguins own the Caps, the Los Angeles Lakers. Yes, the Lakers have had several dominant runs, but since Papa Bus died, the Lakers have turned into a power struggle over the team, like walkers fighting over a wounded human, with nobody having a clue as to who really runs this team. Then of course you have the kid D'Angelo Russell trying to white knight Iggy Azalea, and the soap opera rolls on. And Kobe's last game was blatantly rigged. And lastly, we can thank Magic Johnson for letting us know that the good AIDS exists. The Memphis Grizzlies, a team that thought that setting up shop in the Canadian Northwest would be a great idea, probably making up all 12 of the city's minorities when they were there. What about drafting Hasheem Can You Feel Thabit with the number 2 overall pick, passing on James Harden, Tyreek Evans, Ricky Rubio, and of course Steph Curry? You've also been in the league 20 fucking years and haven't won a single division title, and somehow getting to the conference finals in 2013 and getting swept. Unlike the Grizz, let's stay in Canada with the Toronto Raptors, who let Kobe drop 81 points and his nuts on them in 2006. You've been average at best, kind of like Vince Carter's interesting but weird career. You've been successful recently, however, just like the rest of the East, until he retires, you're LeBron's bitch. The Portland Trail Blazers. You made a run to the finals, cast off Clyde the Glide, and watched him win 2 championships while you faded into obscurity. You did have a chance to get back to the finals in 2000, but you blew a 16-point second half lead to the Lakers, shooting just 22% in the fourth quarter. Oh, and you used the number 1 draft pick on Grandpa Greg Oden. You couldn't look at this dude and know he was 87 years old? The Orlando Magic. How could you lose Shaq? You had a great duo with him and Anthony Hardaway, but Little Penny just got hurt a lot, and Shaq just didn't want to be there. Of course, you followed that act by bringing in the most frail Superman ever, Dwight Howard, and you're still looking for that first championship. Have a Disney day, Magic fans. Charlotte Hornets, the team owned by Crying Jordan, hasn't had much to smile about, whether they are named the Bobcats or the Hornets. Really, this expansion team hasn't had much to celebrate, and in 2011/2012, in a shortened season, they finished with a record of 7-59, the worst winning percentage in NBA history. They did have Bismack Biyombo holding it down in the middle, though, and currently they have Dwight Howard. That should trigger you. Despite all the Spurs' success, I'm willing to bet Ray Allen hitting this 3 is going to hurt. How about after nearly keeping pace with the Warriors all season long for the win record, they aged overnight in the playoffs versus the Thunder. And now Kawhi is all alone, and you're going to find out that Pop being a dick to reporters when you're winning is strategic, but when you're losing, he's just being a dick. The Utah Jazz, your entire existence, the great Stockton and Malone, the misnomer of being the Jazz despite being in Salt Lake City, your late 90s success, all of that is erased from one single triggering moment. This shot. And yes, he pushed off. Cleveland Cavaliers, we're getting close to the end here. Let's remember the days before LeBron's mom just happened to drop him out of her uterus in Akron. Remember that time MJ also did this to you? You were pathetic before Bron got there. Mark Price and Craig Elo were your most notable players, and even when the King got there, you wasted his talents by not surrounding him with any. So not only he left, but he bought a primetime TV slot to break your hearts with. Then he comes back, but the Warriors come out of nowhere to ruin what could have been a dynasty. I guess you could win it this year, but if you don't, LeBron is like your wife coming home with new tits and a penchant for travel, a flight risk. And finally, the New York Knicks. As I said earlier, this team will get it pretty hard as I know them all too well. So it's been, I don't know, 40 plus years since this team won a championship, and they have been in the league since 1946, and they only have 2. Let's just rip these band-aids off. Reggie scoring 8 in 9 seconds. Patrick Ewing missing that wide open layup, and then Reggie doing it to us again. Losing the finals to the Rockets when in Game 7, John Starks thought he was on fire. The Spurs completely dominating the aging Knicks. Scott Layden giving Allen Houston all the money, and then Isaiah slapping girls' butts and ruining this team, ushering in the Stevie franchise, Starberry, Stoudemire era. Amari punching glass and missing playoff games. Really, dude? Then trading for the carcinoma that is Carmelo Anthony, the 10 minutes that was Linsanity, and of course the Phil Jackson fiasco. Phil Jackson, please stick to smoking weed and running the triangle with the greatest players the NBA has ever seen, because being a GM just isn't your thing. And winning with this team isn't either, as there is no hope in sight as long as Dolan owns this team. That name should trigger Knick fans more than all of the shit that I just mentioned. Fucking Knicks, damn it. Now I'm triggered. It's time to drink some tequila and start a fight with my bathroom door. Did you like this video? If you stayed to the end and didn't just skip to your team, I say thank you. And don't forget to download the FanDuel app and enter in the code SCORE5 and get a free entry into NBA Clutch Shot and start winning some dough. Please leave a like, comment your anger or lack thereof, and subscribe if you want to see more. And as always, I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to the end of this video.